Welcome to Burnout-Free Me, your success and well-being podcast. I'm Dr. Amy Grimm, and I am so glad you're here. Let's go from burnout to breakthrough together. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Daring DVM podcast, where I help high achievers like you stop running on fumes and start living life on your own terms. You're listening to episode 119 today, and we are pulling back the curtain on what's really going on in your nervous system and why that very wiring makes you more vulnerable to burnout. So if you're a veterinarian, lawyer, business exec, physician, small business owner, or any other high-achieving baddie, then you probably care a lot about the work you do, sometimes to the detriment of your own well-being. When you're at work, just pushing through often feels like second nature. Slowing down can feel impossible. And this is because of how your brain and body have been trained to respond to constant demands. So today, we're talking about this, how the state of chronic activation keeps you in overdrive, erodes your resilience, and sets the stage for exhaustion long before you even realize it's happening. Most importantly, I'm going to introduce you to a tool that might surprise you: self-compassion. Not as a soft, fluffy add-on, but as a proven, practical first step toward both recovering from burnout and preventing it in the future. And if you enjoy this episode and you want to go deeper into learning tools like this, plus strategies for setting boundaries, rewiring your stress response, and creating a life where your energy and happiness don't get sacrificed for your success, come join me in my Burnout-Free Me coaching program. Burnout isn't something you recover from alone or in a vacuum. It requires real support and intentional tools. In Burnout-Free Me, you'll get a powerful mix of mindset coaching, nervous system regulation, and practical real-world strategies that actually stick, so you can step off the hamster wheel, reclaim your time and energy, and finally feel like yourself again. Doors open in September, and I would love to see you there. So for anyone who is experiencing or has experienced burnout before, you know that it comes with a whole host of symptoms. And for high achievers and performers, burnout shows up in two ways: externally, in how you function and present to the world, and internally, in what you silently carry. Externally, burnout can look like this relentless drive to push through fatigue and to work long hours despite diminishing returns. Over time, you may notice a drop in your creativity, productivity, quality of work, along with more frequent mistakes. Things that were once simple are now draining. Things that should be easy are becoming more difficult or tedious. And you forget simple information and just don't know why. You can also experience irritability, impatience, or withdrawal from social interactions. And you may notice physical signs such as chronic exhaustion, even when you get a full night's sleep, tension headaches, back pain, digestive issues, frequent colds, or changes in your sleep patterns. Now, internally, the symptoms run deeper and are often harder to detect. Emotionally, high achievers may feel detached from work they once loved. and it's replaced by cynicism, resentment, or even apathy. You can experience guilt or shame for feeling unmotivated or not caring enough, which then fuels self-criticism. Mentally, there's often a persistent sense of overwhelm. You may have trouble concentrating, have racing thoughts, difficulty making decisions that once felt simple, and difficulty leaving work at work. You find yourself overthinking and ruminating about the day and what potential problems you may encounter in the future. That inner voice that once encouraged you and motivated you to get to where you are can turn harsh and demanding, eroding your self-worth. Physically, your body remains in a heightened state of stress, so tight muscles, shallow breathing, and elevated heart rate, these become the norm, even during downtime. And this can lead to feelings of unexplained anxiety. Over time, this internal strain chips away at your resilience, leaving you feeling like you're running on fumes. The dangerous paradox is that high achievers are adept at masking and often ignoring these signs. So they continue to perform at a high level while their emotional reserves run dry. By the time your symptoms are fully visible to others, the internal depletion is often profound, making recovery more complex and urgent. And let's be honest, the work we do, especially as high achievers, is demanding. Just think of all the things you are responsible for on a daily basis. How many people rely on you, all the work you get done, and all the work that remains and keeps adding up. When you feel like you cannot slow down and like you have to make it through the day, yet you are burning out, you may wonder why it seems like your own body is turning against you when you need it more than ever to pull through. Thoughts like, I cannot be this mentally exhausted and physically depleted because I have work to do. I've got to keep it together until the end of the day, and then somehow do it all over again tomorrow. And the truth is, your body and brain are not failing you. They are not sabotaging you or letting you down. They are trying to protect you. What you experience as burnout is an exquisite self-preservation mechanism. So let's talk about the physiology of stress as a protective mechanism. Your sympathetic nervous system is your threat defense system. We also call it fight, flight, or freeze for the options it gives us to save our lives in an emergency. For example, you may need to fight off an attacker, flee from a car that's about to hit you, or freeze to escape notice or give your prefrontal cortex time to come up with a strategy. That's how we survive. But unfortunately, work stress triggers our survival system in the same way because our autonomic nervous system doesn't know the difference between a perceived threat versus an actual life threat. And this becomes a problem at work when this threat response system drives us all the time. So even though most modern threats are not life and death situations for us, we are still very vulnerable to these modern stressors. Stresses are the events that cause us stress. In this scenario, stress equals the physical, mental, or emotional tension caused by demanding situations and demanding events that throw us out of our normal equilibrium. So at work, your nervous system is threatened by impossible deadlines, overscheduling, high standards, unrealistic expectations of outcomes, harsh leadership, short staffing, insufficient rest or breaks, and the inability to express or process emotions for the sake of being professional. These events deplete us, our resources, and lead to exhaustion and frustration. This is all very triggering to you and your nervous system. And your threat defense system doesn't know you are not being eaten alive. All it knows is that a threat has been detected and it needs to mobilize you for survival. It's your internal first responder, which is handy when there is a last minute push to the finish line, like working late to finish a grant proposal. But it becomes a problem when instead of a one and done event, multiple stresses come at us all day long. Our system becomes hypervigilant and starts kicking in unnecessarily. And at work, the stresses often don't let up. Packed schedules, sales goals, crazy competition in the marketplace, looming deadlines, client complaints. These all add up. Additionally, we may have personal financial stresses weighing on us, and even things like daily childcare and caregiving make constant demands on our resources. This means our threat defense system is turned on more than it's turned off. Essentially, we are always on, and our bodies try to cope by adapting to the newer, higher levels of daily stress. But without taking time to reset the stress response, this eventually leads to chronic stress, and chronic stress depletes our energy resources, leading to exhaustion and eventually burnout. Chronic stress wears your body down. Your threat response releases hormones like adrenaline and cortisol that set off chain reactions and alter bodily function to prepare you to fight, flee, or freeze. Your heart rate and respiration speed up. Your airways widen to send extra oxygen to muscles and to your brain to increase alertness. You receive extra fuel in the form of glucose for mobilization. And while this is effective in the short term, in small doses, when this occurs too frequently or for too long, your cardiovascular system becomes strained. So you get exhausted and energetically depleted. You burn out and your health suffers. Unabated stress leaves you suffering the effects of an overzealous but well-meaning threat defense system. And as I already pointed out, our modern day threats are not threats to our survival, but they are threats to our self-worth and sense of competence and confidence. This is crucial for high achievers to understand because we often have these internalized beliefs that our value comes from how much we can do, not who we are or how we work. So this can be especially damaging. Feeling overwhelmed, like there's too much to do or not enough time, leads us to assume that there is something wrong with us. We believe it's because we are not doing enough or not doing it right. And high achievers start seeing our perceived inadequacies as the biggest threat we face. So what do? We turn our threat response against ourselves in an effort to find safety. Counterintuitive, yes, but bear with me. If I am the threat that I most need to protect myself against, then the best plan of action I can take is to fix myself, right? If I can just get my act together and work harder and accomplish more, I can solve my problems of perceived inadequacy and be safe. So what does this look like? What does it look like to turn your threat response inward on yourself? You may fight yourself and mentally beat yourself up for not being more competent or for not doing more or for not doing it fast enough or good enough or not being cut out for this career. This helps you feel safe because as a high achiever, you likely have a loud inner critic voice and you have been taught and you believe that harsh inner criticism will help you change yourself for the best. Just get it done. There's no time to rest. Finish that email. This responsibility falls on you. If the work doesn't get done, then it's your fault. So push through and get it done. This negative self-talk causes you to flee into spirals of shame and to isolate yourself. For example, not asking for help, not sharing your struggles or how you're feeling, not delegating, not setting boundaries. This creates perceived safety because by hiding your internal struggles, you feel less exposed to the judgment of others. If you just do what's expected, and often then some more, you won't have to feel as guilty or judged, and you'll at least be able to tell yourself you're doing your best. And finally, when things get overwhelming, you can freeze and ruminate on how terrible your work and your life are. This helps you feel safe because high achievers are often quite smart and believe that if we think hard enough, we can figure out how to escape the problem. So we overthink conversations and worry about worst case scenarios and what we might do if they occur. We replay everything in our mind. We stress over what still needs to be done. It's a false sense of control, when in reality, it just makes us feel powerless. Essentially, you're just kicking yourself when you're down and making it harder to get up. Because it's impossible to feel safe and allow yourself to relax and recover from stress when you are treating yourself as both the predator and the prey. Okay, so that is how we get stuck in the cycle where we keep doing more and working harder in demanding jobs until we exhaust ourselves and burn out. Now, the solution to this is twofold. It requires systems that protect us and help us create sustainable, healthy careers. And it requires us to change the way we respond to our threat defense system. Today, we're talking about what is within our control. That is rewiring our response. Luckily, we have another physiological system that evolved to help us survive, and that is our care system, also known as our attachment system. One way in which our human species feels safe is through warmth and connection. The care system refers to the mental and emotional bonds that arise when we care for others or when we are cared for by others. From an evolutionary perspective, it evolved to ensure that parents would look after their offspring and that group members would look after each other to ensure the survival of our species. Your care system releases oxytocin, the love hormone, and endorphins, our natural soothing painkillers. This helps us to feel comforted and calm. It also activates our parasympathetic nervous system, our rest and digest, which counteractivates sympathetic arousal. The way this works is that after the need for self-preservation and survival has eased off, our levels of cortisol and adrenaline drop, our heart rate and blood pressure and respiration rate decrease back to baseline, our digestion gets back on track, and we start to feel relaxed, open, and safe. The threat defense system and care system work together to perpetuate the survival of our species. The first protects us from threats that may kill us, and the second promotes our genetic line. Your threat defense system evolved primarily for self-preservation, and your care system evolved primarily for the preservation of others. This is why it feels more natural to criticize yourself and be compassionate to someone else. It explains why we use our threat system more quickly and easily than the care system, given that our most basic need is to stay alive. So if we don't think we can meet a deadline, we instinctively respond with fight, flight, and freeze turned inward. But when a colleague cannot meet a deadline, we don't feel personally threatened, so we can respond with warmth and support. This is why we instinctually criticize ourselves, but show compassion to others. Compassion quiets the stress response and helps return us to a parasympathetic state. When you practice self-compassion, you are turning your care system inward in response to a threat. It doesn't feel entirely natural, but the good news is our bodies don't know the difference. Self-compassion activates the parasympathetic nervous system and deactivates the sympathetic one. It also decreases cortisol and stress-related markers like inflammation. This difference in nervous system response leads to better health, such as improved immune function, because your sympathetic system is not hyperactive. You also have better sleep, which allows for better recovery from stress. You respond better psychologically and emotionally to stresses, so they are less likely to overwhelm you. And you even develop a lower perception of stress. That is, problems don't seem as big or unsolvable anymore. We feel safer when stressed because we have our own back, and we no longer view it as life and death. We see life and our careers with greater balance and perspective. This alters the way we respond to internal stress, removing that focus from low self-worth and incompetence, and instead focusing on caring for ourselves, which means we don't overly criticize ourselves, we don't feel as isolated, and we ruminate less on our stresses. We are more accepting of ourselves and use kindness to encourage adaptation and change. This improves our performance, makes our days easier and less stressful, improves our career satisfaction, and most importantly, improves our overall health and well-being. That is why self-compassion is a must-know tool and strategy for living a healthy, sustainable, burnout-free life. Okay, my friend, I hope you found this information useful. If you want to learn how to practice self-compassion and pick up other tools that help your nervous system feel calm, steady, and at peace, come join me in Burnout-Free Me. Burnout isn't something you recover from alone or in a vacuum. You need real support and intentional tools, and that's exactly what you'll get so you can take back your energy, your time, and your joy. The link is in the show notes, or you can find out more on my website at daringdvm.com. I love who you are, and even more than that, I love who you're becoming. So show yourself some self-compassion and dare to dream.